We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
Mike Renner in the flesh, replacing Anthony Tresh. Unnecessary rhyme, but here we are. I missed you, man. Anthony's great, by the way. PFF_Anthony. Follow him on Twitter. Listen to the last 2 episodes. Is fantastic on the podcast. But I missed you, man. I'm glad to have you back.
No, it's glad to be back. I needed that little break because this is it today.
This is the time.
It is the beginning, officially, in my eyes, of draft season.
Absolutely.
My favorite season of the year.
I am stoked for it, man. I think this is going to be an absolute fire draft season. The quarterback conversation, a very good wide receiver class. This is in the offseason, I think it's going to be hectic too. A lot of teams need to make upgrades at the quarterback position. There's 6 open head coaching gigs, 5 open GM gigs. This is going to be a fantastic offseason. And you're starting it right with a dry January. Before the podcast, you were saying, I might look into getting unalcoholic or non-alcoholic six-packs.
Yeah.
Lagunitas.
They don't have any calories either, apparently, which I don't know how that works. I don't think it's
just
actually
drink water. That sounds
I was just going to say, that's water. No calories, no sugar, no
alcohol.
Flavor, no alcohol. That's water.
Just drink water, dude.
So it was actually ironic. I was looking through Darius Slayton's tweets today because he was pissed off about the Eagles, debacle, which we should probably talk about a little as well.
Yeah.
And he was like pimping out non-alcoholic Budweiser. He's like, I guess sponsored, has like a partnership with them. And I was like, why is that such a weird, to get an NFL player to be tweeting about dry January is kind of weird. But yeah, I might down some non-alcoholic Budweiser.
I will not be doing
I'll have one on the pod on Wednesday.
Really?
There we go.
Let's go. Bring me one too, actually. I'll try one. I'll try one. We'll see if Lagunitas, the non-alcoholic side, can sponsor the podcast. Before we dive into the college football playoff reactions, if you want to talk about the Jalen Hurts, Carson Wentz, Nate Sudfeld saga that broke down, or the events that broke down in week 17, I think people are overreacting to this. I will say it right now. I think people are overreacting to this across the board.
Yes, that 1,000% yes. If any team has a gripe over the occurrences of what happened yesterday, it is the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts have a legitimate gripe because they could have won yesterday, which they did, handled their business, and gotten screwed because the Browns played a Steelers team without Ben Roethlisberger starting, and the Dolphins played a Bills team that sat down Josh Allen halfway through the game. Now, the Dolphins shit the bed, and they choked, and they had their worst game of the season easily on both sides of the ball. But they could have actually gotten screwed because 2 teams that were playing better teams than them got lucky by having to face those games in Week 17. The Giants, on the other hand, after having won 6 games this season, did not get screwed by anyone. And the Eagles are well within their rights to not play, to not give their best roster out there, and to not try to win a Week 17 game that they didn't want to win. That if you're thinking about the future, you legitimately do not want to win that game. So I think that if you're going to condone one, you have to condone all of them. And you have to say that Patrick Mahomes should have played yesterday, that Josh Allen should have played a full game yesterday, that all these guys, that you can't sit those guys in Week 17. Because if it should matter to the Eagles is kind of the argument, then it should matter to all those teams as well.
The Giants situation, or the Eagles situation, is interesting because they obviously don't want to win that football game. If they win that game, they pick at number 9. If they lose that game, they pick at number 6.
It's not that big of a deal.
It's a little bit with the quarterback class. I think it is a big deal.
But in this one, I think it matters. It is meaningful.
With the quarterback class, I think this is a big deal for the Philadelphia Eagles. For the Giants players complaining on Twitter that Nate Sudfeld come in. You should have won 2 or 3 more games, and you have that division outright. I do think that the Eagles-Washington football team game was one of the more interesting ones. I don't think they needed to see or evaluate Nate Sudfeld on those last 3 drives to understand that he's not the quarterback of the future. It's an interesting excuse. I don't think they needed to do that. The other interesting game that I do think is that Miami Dolphins game, where Brian Flores, I think, had Coach of the Year all locked up. Had to show up against a Buffalo Bills team that didn't need to win that game, was going to bench or seemingly bench Josh Allen after he cleared 40 passing yards and got the single season franchise record. He ends up playing a little bit longer than that, but they still get absolutely trounced. They played down to the competition, and it wasn't even close. This wasn't a Browns-Jets game where the Browns kept it close but ended up losing in the end. This was like an absolute demolishing for the Miami Dolphins, an unfortunate situation, and now they're on the outside looking in at the postseason. Absolutely absurd. And another, I think a similar situation, and I just want to recap the NFL season or NFL Week 17 with this game as well. Cliff Kingsbury and the Arizona Cardinals went against John Wolford and the Los Angeles Rams and lost that football game. Yes, Kyler Murray didn't play. That is part of it, but I do think you have to show up and try and put a better effort to win that football game, in my opinion. Even without Kyler Murray, they're playing their backup quarterback as well. I will say this, though. Roger Sherman, I don't know if you follow him on Twitter. He works for The Ringer. Tweeted this out as soon as Strevler came in, the backup that played for Arizona. He had the worst touchdown-interception ratio in the Canadian Football League before going to the NFL. And on his way to a Grey Cup, was benched for the backup quarterback who ended up winning that Grey Cup. I don't know
how he made it.
I don't know how he made it to the NFL.
It's because he's got that sweet picture of him holding the whatever their trophy is called.
Trophy,
the Grey Cup trophy, where he's got the cowboy hat on and he's got the cigar, and
it went around Twitter. Just liked him. You just liked the guy.
I mean, he seems cool.
He does seem cool. I'm not Quinn. I'm not saying he doesn't seem cool. He seems awesome. He's a Canadian guy, won the Grey Cup as a backup with the worst touchdown interception ratio. Is now in the NFL playing in Week 17. Not because the Cardinals are resting their starters. They didn't earn that right because Kyler Murray exits that game with an injury. All right, enough of the NFL. Week 17 is crazy. Don't overreact to teams actively tanking. I think the best response is one you tweeted out saying that you should be, they're in the same situation as teams that were resting their starters for the postseason. They're trying to win a Super Bowl. Not this year, obviously, but in the future, they're trying to win a Super Bowl. And that starts with having the best draft capital possible. And that, again, results in a loss of playing Nate Sudfeld late in the fourth quarter. I also think the other tweet that I liked is we're going to talk about him benching Jalen Hurts, who wasn't playing all that well anyway for Nate Sudfeld, and not talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars playing Mike Glennon for 4 weeks. That's another situation where you see.
Yeah, it just so happened to be Sunday Night Football primetime Week 17.
Yes.
Teams have made decisions that are not in their best interest a lot throughout NFL history.
I also think Doug Peterson was right to go for that fourth down when they could have tied it up at 17-17. They should have gone for that fourth down. I believe in what PFF hands NBC in terms of the math that suggested that was the better choice in win probability to go for that fourth down. The problem is when you go for it on fourth down and you don't get it, the issue is never the execution. The issue is always the decision. Why is that? Why isn't the issue that Jalen Hurts missed an open receiver in the end zone? Or even on the play before missed an open receiver in the end zone. Yeah. Or even when they get stuffed, like QB sneak on 4th and 1, they don't get it. It's like, oh man, that was a terrible call. Why is it never the execution? I don't understand that.
Yeah. And
I think it's because people hate math.
And it's funny though when it's the opposite when it's a kick. Like they decide to kick a 55-yard field goal. Oh, it's the kicker's fault.
That's a very good take. It's like kicker misses it. It's like, oh my God, Cody Parkey sucks.
Yeah.
It's like, no. How come it wasn't a decision to kick the field goal in the first place, which also has some probabilities of missing? Yeah. I don't want to talk about it too much. I think people just love to hate on analytics and the quote-unquote spreadsheets, but there were some really bad takes on Twitter last night about that decision, in my opinion. I think there were some bad takes. All right, college football playoff reactions. Let's start with Alabama, Notre Dame. You're wearing the Notre Dame t-shirt today, I guess out of mourning, like you're going to a funeral. It was absolutely horrendous. This is the Notre Dame. They are who we thought they were. Play the clip.
The Bears are who we thought they were. And that's why we took the damn field. Now, if you want to crown them, then crown their ass. But they are who we thought they were. And we let them off the hook.
Thank you, Quinn. Thanks for playing that. They are who we thought they were. Notre Dame was a bad football team with a underperforming quarterback that had a couple hot spots, had a couple hot starts, and then played poorly against Alabama, and Alabama trounced them.
They were not okay. People asked me how I thought the game was going to go. I thought it was going to go the way it went. I thought Notre Dame was going to slow down Alabama's offense to some degree. Like they weren't just going to get blown the doors off, but you can only slow down Alabama's offense a little. Like they're still going to score in the 30s. I don't care who they're playing this year. Best defense in college football. I don't care who it is. They will score points because that's how talented they are offensively. They did that job, like holding them to 31. That was their lowest point total all season, I think by 8 points. Like I think they did that job. They were never, Ian Book was never going to be able to score 30 plus points against this Alabama defense. That's where you have to. That's where if you're going to beat Alabama, and I think Ohio State has a chance of beating Alabama, you have to win a shootout. And Notre Dame just does not have the horses to win shootouts. So even when they beat Clemson, they scored 27 in 27 points offensively in that game.
I think the total right now, the line for the Alabama-Ohio State game is like 75.
Yeah, I think it's going to be
shootout. It's going to be a shootout.
Yeah.
For Ian Book, starting with the Clemson game in technically NCAA Week 10, you're in the best game of his, best single game grade of the season, 85.4. Went on a streak against Boston College, North Carolina, and Syracuse in the 3 subsequent weeks with 83-plus PFF grades. And the 2 weeks after that, the 2 losses to Clemson and Alabama, 60.5 and 55.4. That's the Ian Book we know. That's the Ian Book that when going into that game against DJ Uiagalelei, we're like, oh man, worst quarterback in this situation. Don't think they pull out this win. Yeah. He had a hot streak. He got hot. Faded down the end, and I think that's ultimately why that Notre Dame offense couldn't win in a shootout with Alabama.
Every year, I feel like the Senior Bowl invites one of those guys to it, where it's like one guy that's kind of just a name to get that fan base in, almost like a lifetime achievement award to get that guy in. Because Ian Book, if he gets drafted, I will be absolutely floored. That is just, he does not have the arm playing the NFL, and he does not have the quick decision making at all. Like that's the thing that kind of everyone swept over. He does not throw with anticipation whatsoever in that offense, which
kind of reminds me
kills him. It's like that's like a death knell for a quarterback. If you have a weak arm, you don't throw anticipation, you're not playing in the NFL.
He kind of reminds me of, from a success standpoint, maybe not exactly from a play style perspective, but from a success at the collegiate level at a big school, Connor Cook, who I think still holds like the all-time winningest record for Michigan State and started there for multiple years and had some success in Michigan State, but was never a legitimate prospect, right? But then he ends up going high in the 3rd round for some of the successes that he did have.
He did, but yeah.
I think the Raiders traded up for him actually in that draft. I'm not 100% sure, but from a collegiate success, from a wins and losses perspective, Ian Book and Connor Cook are probably held in the same regard. But from an actual draft prospects perspective, Ian Book, day 3 potentially, depending on how he performs at the Senior Bowl maybe. Jumping to Ohio State Clemson, this was a stunner, an absolute stunner. And I want to talk prospects too, more than just why each team lost the football game. But Clemson had 7 drives in the first half. The last drive expired in the second half, and they weren't pushing to score the football. 4 of their 6 first drives, they went 3 and out. That is how you go down 35 in the first half, or allow Ohio State to put up 35 in the first half. They allowed big plays on defense. Seth wrote a really, really good article for PFF.com talking about how Justin Fields was absolutely manipulating the middle of a field safety for Clemson. But I think offensively, Clemson just laid an egg. And I don't think it was completely Trevor Lawrence's fault. He had the bad dropped interception that should have been a pick, and it was awful, one of the worst throws this season, and a couple of bad fumbles when he was pressing to get back in this game. But I don't think it was an awful game for Trevor Lawrence. I don't think his stock is dropping at all. I just think it was a really bad offensive performance for Clemson, specifically in the first half when they got into that hole. And then overall, just an absolutely atrocious defensive performance where Justin Fields had a literal field day against Clemson.
No, I think Brett Venables had one of his worst coach games I've seen from him, the DC. They weren't getting lined up in time. They weren't getting they were busting coverages left and right. It was pretty brutal. But the real kind of story of the game was Tony Elliott being out, the Clemson offense coordinator, being out with COVID.
Exactly.
And their play calling was some of the worst I've seen. Like legitimate play. Usually when you're at home, like after the game, it's easy to be like, oh, the play calling was bad just when the offense didn't go well. There were plays where you can point to that are like, any offensive coordinator that's worth a damn would not have run those plays when they're going back-to-back quarterback counters with Trevor Lawrence. Instead of letting him throw on like 2nd and shorts and when you're down in the 3rd quarter, that's absurd. Going play action when you're down 28 is never, like no one's buying that. And they got almost sacked twice on those. The matchup to me, though, that side of this game was not Ohio State's offense versus Clemson's defense, because I think if things went better for Clemson, they could have won a shootout. Like they could have put up that many points. It was Clemson's offensive line against Ohio State's defensive line that, again, has some legitimate prospects on it. Tyreek Smith went to town. Jonathan Cooper went to town. Tommy Togiai, close enough, went to town on that Clemson offensive line. That Clemson offensive line really, outside of Jack Harmon, none of those guys are going to be playing in the league. It's just not a talented offensive line right now.
There's 3 prospects or 4 prospects I want to talk about coming out of these two games.
Yeah.
One is Justin Fields. Let's talk about him when we get to the mock draft. 2 is Devontae Smith, which I think we can have that conversation in the mock draft as well. The other 2, I think, are Shaun Wade Or I guess it's just 3. I think it's just 3. I think it's just those 3. Shaun Wade is the other guy I want to talk about.
Darian Kendrick, too.
And Darian Kendrick. Shaun Wade earned a 52.0 PFF grade in this game. He has not had a good season at outside corner for Ohio State. And I think some of that you can blame on the abbreviated offseason, going from slot corner to outside corner in a man-heavy system. It was not going to be easy for him to have a ton of success this year. But I do think that his ability to match and mirror corners match and mirror receivers on the outside is not there to the level where you'd want to draft him as an outside corner in the first round. I don't think he's next in line at Ohio State to be this first-round cornerback prospect anymore.
No, I agree. He's just I don't think he will end up in the first round anymore.
I still like his box/slot safety prospects. I think he played at a high level at that position in 2020. It still wasn't perfect, but I think he played at a much higher level there than he did at outside corner. And for that reason, top of day 2, even middle of day 2, with the guy who I think he's a former 5-star, former 4-star recruit, whatever it was, I do think there's enough there to have a very productive starter, and I'll say starter because slot and box starts in the NFL at the top of day 2 or the middle of day 2.
Yeah, I think teams are evaluating, going to have to just look at him as a safety at this point. He allowed for 143 yards in that game. Teams are going to have to look at him as a safety. And
Cornell Powell was just
but I mean, he was just not able to play man coverage on the outside. That's just not where you're going to look at him at. Kendrick's the one that's interesting to me, though, because this is the first real wide receiver he kind of faced all season. Clemson has not faced a lot of dynamic passing offenses in the ACC. I think they skirted around North Carolina. Is that right? This season. So no Diami Brown on his schedule. 4 targets, 122 yards. Now, I think he got a little victimized by the fact that their safeties were out to lunch that whole game and he had no help, but still got ran past by Chris Olave. Like, that's not a good sign when Chris Olave is separating from you down the field, because his whole game is not speed. No one's ever called him, a speedster, even though I do think he's playing fast enough for the NFL. But Darian Kendrick, he cost himself some dollars with that.
Gave up 56 yards to Chris Olave on that deep one, and then a 47-yard shot to Garrett Wilson as well. Unfortunate stuff for Darian Kendrick in this game. All right, let's move on now to the open GM and coaching jobs. We can move quickly and jump to the mock draft. Everyone tuned in to hear this mock draft, Mike. It's shattering PFF's website right now. But let's first start with the head coaching positions. We could probably hold these in tandem for where there is opportunity. Starting with the Jags, both the head coach position and the GM position are open. How attractive are these openings for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and who are some names you like to be in Jacksonville?
All right. So I'm going to power rank the open head coaching positions here right quick.
Oh, you're going to power rank?
I'll just go 1 through 6 here. Jacksonville, to me, is the single most attractive head coaching position and the single most attractive GM position because of what they offer from a young talent perspective and the fact that you're going to have Trevor Lawrence quarterback. So to me, they're number 1. Chargers are number 2 for head coaching position. You have Justin Herbert. You have that defense, getting guys like Derwin James back next year. Obviously, you have Joey Bosa there as well. There's just a lot of blue chip type talent. All you really need at this point, offensive line. Texans, number 3, just because, again, you have Deshaun Watson. There's a common theme here. If you got a quarterback, that's an attractive head coaching position. There's a lot you can do with a guy like Deshaun Watson. It gives you a high floor. Your floor, they kind of hit the floor this season, though, Texans. Mm-hmm. They hit about as low as you can possibly go for a quarterback playing at Deshaun Watson's level. So really the only place they can go is up at this point. So they're number 3. Falcons, number 4. Again, they have Matt Ryan. And then the Jets at number 5 in terms of head coaching, a position I'd like to go to. A lot of holes on that roster, and quarterback not as sure a thing as Trevor Lawrence at number 1, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, whoever it may be. You're going to have to, they may not hit the ground running. There's a larger bust potential there. And then number 6, Detroit Lions. Detroit Lions are kind of purgatory right now with that roster. There's not a lot of true blue chip type of talent players, cornerstone pieces to that roster at the moment. They kind of just have a bunch of guys. And so you're going to have to make your money if you go to be the head coach of the Detroit Lions. I think I'm fine with those rankings. Where I'd consider a flip is Texans and Falcons. Texans up to 3 and Falcons down to, or Texans down to 4 and Falcons up to 3. Okay. Because even though Deshaun Watson is a better quarterback than Matt Ryan, by a mile, he's played outstanding this year. Should have been in the running for MVP if the team didn't lose 4 games. Like, he has been that good for the Houston Texans. But I think the Atlanta Falcons still have a top 10 quarterback in Matt Ryan. They have the number 4 overall pick in this draft and a ton of pieces. Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley. I think the offensive line they've invested in the offensive line. Jake Matthews still there for the Atlanta Falcons. Defensively,
it needs work. There's some talent that needs to be added on that side of the football, but I think it's talent that they can add in free agency or the draft. I feel are closer to being a dominant team in the NFL than the Texans are. And I think with coaching, this is a team that a lot of people are on board with to be a playoff team in 2021.
See, with the Falcons, though, you're going to have to navigate a quarterback switch within the next 3 or 4 years. Like Matt Ryan's 36, I believe, right now. You're going to have to worry about that. With the Texans, if you can survive the next 2 years of kind of having a shitty roster and being no real way of rejuvenating it, you can coast with Deshaun Watson for the next decade then. You can say, hey, I got this top 5 quarterback. I'm going to be good at that point. So I do think that's what swayed it in the Texans.
I think that's why the Texans are in a position to be a year early on a coach. Be a year early on a younger coach, whether he's from the college ranks or a young offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, because they're not going to be good. They're not going to be in a situation they can really add to this roster in free agency or the draft for 1 or 2 years. But you have the quarterback. Bringing him in and grooming a coach that can establish a legitimate culture in Houston to where when they do have the resources to build up this football team around Deshaun Watson, you have a guy that has now the experience that would be the hottest name in football in the year that you're going to be good, but already on your roster, already making plays for the Houston Texans. I don't think they should target a guy like a win-now type of coach, an older veteran coach. I think they should go young at that position to try and groom a culture in Houston to get to a point where they're competitive with Deshaun Watson in 1 to 2 seasons. That's where I'm standing there. Let's move to GMs now. Rank the GM openings for me.
So obviously the Chargers don't need a GM. The Chargers don't need a GM, and the Jets don't need a GM. But you add in the Panthers here, who fired Marty Herney, and the football team here, who just went last season without a GM. They're just like, we didn't need one. So I'll say number 1, again, Jacksonville. You have the most cap space in the NFL to work with. You have Trevor Lawrence. You have a ton of picks to work with. It's like a kid in a candy store. It's like John Dorsey when he got the Browns job. That is ideal. Even though today Shad Khan said he still has final roster control, which...
But that quote, I think, got misconstrued.
Maybe
I think he wanted to be involved. I think he wants to be involved in the picks and involved in paying the players. I think I saw someone tweet out a kind of a correction or like an added on piece to that quote where it wasn't as bad as like that initial tweet was.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't worry too much about that.
Okay, fair. Number 2, this one a little off the beaten path, but I think the Falcons right now are an interesting team. You got a top pick. You have Matt Ryan. You have, like you said, a roster that's built to compete right now. I think a shrewd GM, you can get that team to a Super Bowl fairly quickly if you make the right moves and the right picks and whatnot. Then I'll go the Panthers at 3. There are pieces there. Again, you have a lot of youth on that roster, and I think you have a lot of cap space coming up to get the job done, and that it gets pretty bleak here.
Yes.
The Detroit Lions at number 4. Again, you have some nice draft capital to work with in this year's draft, but you got a roster that's kind of bereft of talent. Then I go football team at 5 because you are really in purgatory in terms of where you're drafting. Probably going to be 19th overall if they lose this upcoming weekend, and then you need a quarterback. And so that's kind of those two don't really mesh. And then number 6 is the Texans because I don't want Jack Easterby trying to convert me in that locker room. I don't want to have no draft picks over the next 2 years. I don't think that that's a GM job that is all that attractive. Even if you got Deshaun Watson and have some maybe job security with that, you're sitting on your hands for 2 years.
This is the only order I think you can rank the GM openings in. The top 3 are obvious. So Jags, Falcons, Panthers. You could maybe argue Falcons versus Panthers, but you'd rather have Matt Ryan in the situation the Panthers are in at quarterback. They might not get one of the top 4 guys in this class picking at number 8 overall. They might be strapped to Teddy Bridgewater in 2021. For the 4, 5, 6, it's pick your poison, and you want the team with the most picks and the most opportunity. I think you go Lions, football team, Texans. For the Texans, for that GM opening, my opinion there is that they don't need to bring in a guy that's draft savvy. Obviously, he's not going to have an opportunity to draft at the top of the round. You can rely on scouts for that. What they do need to do is bring in a guy that's cap savvy. They need to bring in a guy that can address this cap situation. Yeah. You know, a GM that comes to mind, or a GM candidate potentially that comes to mind that did a really good job in a disastrous cap situation a few years back, Reggie McKenzie for the Raiders. He went into a situation where I think they had the most negative money or dead cap in the NFL and was able to strip that roster and bring it back to fruition. Hit on one draft, 2014, Khalil Mack, Derek Carr, and Gabe Jackson. He even added TJ Carey in that draft too, late in the 7th round, who's still a player in the NFL. And then kind of struggled to add pieces beyond that. But still, what he did from a cap perspective was really, really impressive. I don't know if he's the obvious candidate for the Texans, but I do think whatever GM comes in better be freaking ready to look at this contract situation and find some interesting ways to get out of it and get out of this dead money. Are you ready to mock?
I want to mock.
I want to mock. All right. You published a mock draft for PFF.com today for just the 18 picks that are locked in. Not going to look at the postseason. We don't know where those teams are picking yet. Just the 18 picks that are locked in. It's live on PFF.com. Just Google PFF mock draft. It'll probably be one of the first things that pops up.
Let's hope. You're not doing your job right.
I'm not doing my job if the SEO is trash. Let's look now at the first pick. It's Jacksonville Jaguars taking quarterback Trevor Lawrence. This isn't a discussion, but I have to bring it up. There are some people after Justin Fields' performance.
Maurice Jones-Drew, you mean?
Maurice Jones-Drew, Mojo, who was a great running back, by the way. Let's not throw any Mojo slander on the piece here. Mojo was a great running back.
Yeah.
He's tweeting out that the conversation...
Underrated also, I believe.
What?
Like, I think he's underrated in terms of historically. Like, if he goes to a better franchise over the course of his career or like a team that won more, we would think about him in a much more favorable light. Like, he would be up there with, maybe not Adrian Peterson, but...
Wow.
Like, he was that talented. The guy ran like a 4.39 at like 215 pounds and was 5'7".
He was a monster. Bowling ball. Yeah. He was one of my favorite running backs to watch when I was a kid, when I still valued the position, you know. Yeah. But I still I didn't know we were getting onto this podcast and giving Mojo praise. I thought it was going to be more negative than that. But there is still, regardless, Mojo, whoever it may be, people think, there are some people of the opinion, and let's just talk about it, that this isn't as obvious of a pick anymore. No. The Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields conversation or discourse must happen. It's not as obvious. Do you feel that at all?
No, not at all. I think just watch like Clemson's offense and what they're asking him to do in that offense, and compared to Wilson and Fields, and it's just night and day in terms of how that's going to look then once he gets to the NFL. Mm-hmm. Like, he's asked to make a lot of quick decisions and throw the ball vertically a lot on routes that are ISO routes, like one-on-one type of routes where you have to trust your guy, basically give him a chance. That's not nearly as much as what Fields is doing in that Ohio State offense. He's like waiting out crossers, things like that in that offense, and hitting a lot of wide open guys. I just don't think that, and Wilson BYU as well. So I just do not think that. Yes, they could be better than him in a few years, Wilson, Fields. The safety of Trevor Lawrence is why I'd go Trevor Lawrence.
I'm with you. Sprint the card in. Trevor Lawrence. I mean, this is an easy decision. Don't make it harder on yourself, Jacksonville. Whoever the new GM, head coach is, embrace Trevor Lawrence, win with Trevor Lawrence. Number 2, you have the New York Jets taking Zach Wilson, who right now on PFF's draft board is the number 2 player and number 2 quarterback in this class. Did Justin Fields' performance against Clemson change that at all for you? I know that's recency bias, but it was a damn good one. A 92.0 plus PFF grade. I do think it was an impressive performance. I will say this. My opinion of it is Clemson's defense played like absolute ass. And it was somewhat of an easier performance for Justin Fields. You have to show up. You have to play a good football game regardless of what Brent Venables and that defense did, who were missing some pieces there and had Skalski leave due to a whatever that's called, targeting. They missed it. Nolan Turner in the first half due to a suspension. But I think Zach Wilson over Justin Fields is still the appropriate take. And I won't even field the conversation anymore. The New York Jets do not need to build around Sam Darnold and take the best non-quarterback here at 2. Or even, I won't even think they look into a trade down situation. Stay put at 2 and take the best quarterback left on the board after Trevor Lawrence comes off at 1.
Yes, I think you'd be crazy to move down or to pass on quarterback altogether. That Darnold was an intriguing prospect coming out. Darnold does not hold a candle as a prospect to Zach Wilson or Justin Fields. Not even close. I just do not think.
And I think it's the end of the conversation.
Yeah, I do not think they're on that level. Like, that 2018 class was interesting, was thought of as this great quarterback class, but there was a lot of guys who you would have loved to have gotten, like, and it's why everyone's like, maybe the Browns just trade down and get whichever one falls to them, because they're all kind of thought of in this similar tier. To me, there is a clear top 3 tier in this class of guys that, depending on any other year, would go number 1 overall. Last year could have been drafted ahead of Joe Burrow, could have been drafted ahead of guys like Kyler Murray in years past. That's how good all three of these guys are. And so that doesn't come around every year. And you're in a position with the Jets where they're going to make so many moves in free agency, add so much to this roster over the course of this upcoming season that you're not going to be drafting top 3 next year again. Hope, like you pray you're not. So I do think that this year you got to do it. You got to pull the trigger. And I think it'll be Zach Wilson over Justin Fields because the arm is just, and the off-platform stuff and the accuracy is just on just that a notch above Justin Fields. And that's no knock to Fields. Fields is great in his own right, but I just think Wilson is special in that regard.
Number 3, you have the Miami Dolphins taking offensive tackle Penei Sewell of Oregon. I had this in my mock draft as well. I still do think that the Miami Dolphins need to consider a quarterback at number 3 overall. Mm-hmm. And I will say this, the worst case scenario for the Miami Dolphins, and I'm going to stay to this take probably through April. The worst case scenario for the Miami Dolphins is to stay put at 3 and take Penei Sewell. That's the worst case. I think the best case scenario is to either take a quarterback at 3, get the full value out of that pick, or trade down with the team that you have trading up for, Justin Fields in this next pick, or another team looking to get a quarterback, maybe Philadelphia at 6, trade down, and still grab one of the best non-quarterbacks in this class, whether that's Penei Sewell, Jamar Chase, whoever it may be. Penei Sewell, and I agree with your analysis here, is this year's version of Chase Young, just on the opposite side of the ball, a generational talent at his position. But to get the full value of that pick, I do think that they either need to take a quarterback, increase your opportunity to land and hit a home run at the most valuable position in the NFL, or trade down 1 spot, 2 spot. It could be a Trubisky trade, 1 spot, and still land a Penei Sewell or Jamar Chase at the top of the draft. That is my take. I don't know if I'm deviating.
No, so yes, it's the worst case scenario if in all those sort of
yes, the worst of those 3. They could obviously freaking take.
But they're still in a very good spot because there aren't prospects like Penei Sewell sitting at 3 every year. Mm-hmm. The Rams drafted Greg Robinson at 2. The Chiefs drafted Eric Fisher at 1. Those guys don't come close as offensive tackle prospects to Penei Sewell. Wow, you're lucky that a guy like Penei Sewell is there and that you're in a position to draft him. So yes, you could trade down, recoup value, whatever, but you'd have to get a lot of value in return for me to pass on a guy like Penei Sewell.
And I think that's a fair take. I think it's a very fair take. And I think they're in a very go ahead.
And depending on, like you say, draft another quarterback, and depending on what you do in free agency with that offensive line, no one's succeeding behind that offensive line right now. Mm-hmm. The way that offense is currently constructed, you don't have quick separators at wide receiver, and you have an offensive line that doesn't give you any time. That's just not made for high-level quarterback play. And Ryan Fitzpatrick, God love him, was not playing that, his pure passing stats were not that great either in that offense. So I do think that, they need a lot of help, and Tua was not good, but he was also not bad for a rookie.
If you drop the snap qualifier to 100 dropbacks under pressure, the number 2 graded quarterback under pressure this season was Ryan Fitzpatrick. So you shut your mouth, okay? Ryan Fitzpatrick.
I'm saying from a
put the Ryan Fitzpatrick slander over there and carry it with your non-alcoholic beers.
Okay, but his grade was good. His actual passing stats were lower than what you would expect.
I'm not saying he played well. I just don't want to hear it. I just don't want to freaking hear it. Ryan Fitzpatrick is my guy.
I know.
All right. So either way, the Miami Dolphins in an interesting spot. They definitely 100% should consider a quarterback at 3. I think they're in a very similar situation that the Washington football team was a year ago. They had the pick. They have pick number 2. They have a generational talent at a non-quarterback position. Should they take a quarterback? We had that conversation. Should they take Tua? Should they take Herbert? They ultimately go with Chase Young. It's hard to say what position they'd rather be in now. They're going to the playoffs with Alex Smith and what he has left of his legs. But I do think that how Tua Tagovailoa has panned out, maybe they don't. I mean, hindsight's 20/20, but they're in the same spot in my opinion. They just picked a quarterback. They're in a position to take another one. They could either take this generational talent like Penei Sewell, or they could take the quarterback.
And the interesting thing to me is that this is icing on the cake for the Dolphins, though. This is a pick
that's another part of the conversation.
They have another first-round pick. They can fix offensive, not fix offensive, but they can address the needs elsewhere in the draft, or fill out that roster elsewhere. You could take another swing of the bat. That's almost like I said, icing on the cake, because you weren't expecting to have a number 3 overall pick when you made this trade for Larry Tunsil.
You know what they do? Take Mac Jones at the back at 18. I'm just kidding.
Dude,
I'm just kidding. Don't take Mac Jones at 18. That would be absolutely absurd. Tua Tagovailoa and Mac Jones. Oh, man, that would be rough. All right, let's get off
Mac
this
Jones
pick.
would get pretty He would be motivated, though.
I know he would be motivated. I mean, he's graded better in that Alabama system than Tua did. I think that would be a bad decision, though. Take the quarterback at 3. Take the quarterback at 3 if you're going to take the quarterback. All right, 4, you have the San Francisco 49ers trading up with the Atlanta Falcons to grab the quarterback 3 in this class right now, Justin Fields of Ohio State. I don't know if we need to spend long here. If they can pull off this trade and get out of the Jimmy G contract, I think it's the obvious move for the San Francisco 49ers. 1, I want Kyle Shanahan with a better quarterback than Jimmy G on a rookie deal to build up the rest of that team. 2, I want him with a mobile quarterback. I think Kyle Shanahan with a quarterback with a rushing floor like Justin Fields would be freaking awesome. And so much that I think the San Francisco 49ers team, even with Justin Fields as a rookie, seeing what he's done with Beathard and Mullins, could actually be a legitimate team if they can stay healthy. They were the one team in the NFL that got absolutely brutalized by injuries this year. I think if they can rebound from that, get some positive regression in that, and they add a quarterback like Justin Fields to help the cap situation, add pieces elsewhere, hello, one of the most improved teams in the NFL next year.
Yeah, so if the Dolphins don't trade at 3, I don't see any chance the Falcons stay at 4 unless they themselves draft a quarterback.
Yeah, I agree.
I just cannot fathom. It would be bad business with a new GM to stay at 4 because none of the guys after Sewell, like I love Micah Parsons as a prospect, love Jamar Chase as a prospect. Them compared to what you can get though at pick 12, 13, wherever you do end up trading down to for a team that wants a quarterback is not that massive. I don't think it's going to be that massive of a gap that someone's going to give you probably a second rounder, maybe another first rounder to get up to this number 4 overall pick. And they need that. They have help. They had holes at a lot of positions, this Falcons roster. That's why they bottomed out this year. So I do think that someone, and I think it's the 49ers for an outline in the article, but the fact that Kyle Shanahan has never had a guy outside of Matt Ryan, and Matt Ryan won the MVP with him. And when he did have RG3, who was a mobile quarterback, he put together one of the best rookie seasons ever. And RG3 then without Kyle Shanahan was nothing, like absolutely nothing, and never has been since. So I do think that with a mobile quarterback, that could take that 49ers offense to a level that...
You get me excited. Yeah. Honestly, I'm getting a little excited. I might crack up a non-alcoholic beer. I'm not even kidding. I'm getting that excited. The other thing too, I think you hit the nail on the head. This is one of my favorite things. Is that there isn't a prospect after Penei Sewell where if you stayed put, a non-quarterback prospect after Penei Sewell, to where if the Falcons stayed put at 4, where they wouldn't be being too overconfident in their evaluation. I bring that up a lot. You cannot be
outside quarterback.
You can't non-quarterback. You can't be overconfident in your evaluation of a prospect over a non-quarterback to stay put at 4 with the value of that pick. Because like you said, the value of the other picks that you're getting, regardless of how good you think Jamar Chase is, I think Kwity Paye is the best edge defender in this draft. You cannot be that overconfident. Yeah. Picks bust all the time. You have to trade back and gather value. You're going to get more expected value, more positive expected value if you trade down and gather.
That's the thing. Say you go down to, was it 13 that they'd be trading down to in this if they do trade with, 12. Mm-hmm. Say you trade down to 12, and at 4 you would take Jamar Chase. At 12 you could probably get Devontae Smith. At 4 you take Micah Parsons, you want a linebacker. At 12 you could probably take Jeremiah Wusu-Carmo. It's like a little drop off, but I don't think it's that massive to not get another first round pick out of it.
They can take one of the best cornerbacks in this class. I don't think it's that people are overvaluing their evaluations.
Kwity Paye, Greg Rousseau.
We're going slow. We're spending a lot of time on the top, which I think it makes sense. We'll move a little faster here. One of my favorite.
Some of these are obvious though.
Some of these are obvious, like this one. Cincinnati Bengals taking Jamar Chase. I brought it up on the Wednesday episode of 2 for 1 Drafts with Anthony Tresh. This is the obvious pick for the Cincinnati Bengals if Penei Sewell is off the board. And they stay put at 5. They could obviously trade down, gather more picks. The Cincinnati Bengals, and I tweeted this, the Cincinnati Bengals do not need, all caps need, to draft an offensive lineman at 5. They do not need to force, they don't need to draft an offensive lineman if Penei Sewell falls there. They don't need to. They should. Penei Sewell would be the obvious pick at 5, but they don't need to. What they need to do is address the offensive line in free agency and the offseason. I'll add the offseason to it. Jake Matthews is one of the bigger cap hits for the Atlanta Falcons this upcoming season. Could be on the market. Go make a trade for a guy like Jake Matthews or another offensive tackle, a veteran offensive tackle that can actually help your team now, and then add some interior offensive line pieces like a Joe Thuney, maybe a Brandon Scherf if you can steal him away from Washington this offseason. Or sign Taylor Moton.
Go sign Trent Williams.
Or go sign Trent Williams, one of the highest ranked offensive tackles as a run blocker so far this season. You don't need to take an offensive lineman at 5.
Go get Andrew Whitworth again. He's going to turn 40 this year.
Yeah. So they could go for Whitworth, a little reunion. But I like Jamar Chase. I think he's the best wide receiver prospect in this class. I'm putting him ahead of Devontae Smith, obviously. I think that's obvious in my opinion. Jamar Chase over Devontae Smith. Yeah. So Cincinnati Bengals take the best receiver.
And I think you have the obvious pairing of them, and you have the talent level of a guy who feels fairly comfortably, like based off of what he did as a sophomore at 19 years old in college, to be a true number one receiver in the NFL. And that makes T. Higgins better. That makes Tyler Boyd better. That waterfall effect of it's one of those cascade positions where T. Higgins was your 1, now Tyler Boyd was your 2. Now T. Higgins is your 2 and Tyler Boyd's your 3. That just makes that offense, I think, it take to another level that it just wasn't at this season. And yes, you need offensive line help, but a wide receiver can make an impact sooner, in my opinion, than offensive line.
This is one of my favorite mock picks in this draft class. I think it's one of my favorites. I wish I did it in my mock. The Philadelphia Eagles picking at 6.
Yeah.
They grab quarterback Trey Lance of North Dakota State. I think Eagles fans are going to overreact to the last part of that he's North Dakota State, just like Carson Wentz. We're doing this again. It's a disaster. Let me rephrase. The Philadelphia
If Carson
Eagles,
Wentz isn't butthurt now, he will be butthurt then.
the Philadelphia
and he is butthurt
Eagles,
now also, though. But
you have the Philadelphia Eagles taking quarterback Trey Lance, a big-armed, athletic prospect with a ton of tools and easily a top 10 talent in this class at the most valuable position in the NFL in a situation where you desperately need an upgrade at that position. You played Nate Sudfeld for freaking 3 drives last night. I think this is the obvious pick. It's better than Micah Parsons. Yeah. There's so many Eagles fans that want to take Micah Parsons here. I do not think that is getting the best value of this pick. Take Trey Lance at 6 if he's there.
Just read the tea leaves here. Howie Roseman meets with Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson, I'll lose my mind here. Meets Doug Peterson. They both say their jobs are safe. 2 days later, Doug Peterson subs out Jalen Hurts, doesn't maybe do his best to win that game against the Washington football team to move up 3 picks. If you wanted a linebacker, do you really go through all that trouble to move up 3 picks? If you wanted, a defensive end, are you going through all that trouble to move up 3 picks? You move up 3 picks to position yourself to draft a quarterback in this class. That's why they're so worried about that draft position, because going from number 9, and you're thinking about trading up probably too, going from number 9 to number 4 or number 3 is a little different than going from number 6 to number 3 when a team like the Falcons have their eyes on a blue chip type of prospect. They have their eyes on a Micah Parsons, Jamar Chase. If you're trading all the way back to number 9, you're not going to get that guy. If you're going back to number 6, you're still going to get one of those guys. So I do think that's why they, quote unquote, intentionally lost on Sunday night. And that's what they have their eyes on, is this quarterback class. And to me, Lance makes a lot of sense here. Well, obviously the other 3 are off the board, but because Jalen Hurts can run, you're going to build this offense around a mobile quarterback and around that running game. Trey Lance, the best runner in this draft class.
I like it a lot, man.
Yeah.
Because also going from 9 to 6, in addition to just the mathematical value of those 2 picks, they're getting right behind the 2 top 5 teams that least need a quarterback of the top 5 teams. I'd say the Jets, Dolphins, or Jaguars, Jets, and Dolphins all need a quarterback relatively. They don't have their guy. Well, the Bengals and Falcons are probably in that position where they are obviously not taking a quarterback at those positions. I think they can jump ahead of them with some picks if they need to, or trade with them to land a Justin Fields.
And go from 9 to 6, you jump the Panthers and the Broncos, who could be drafting one of those QBs.
Bingo. That's a great play by Doug Peterson. Again, I have no problem with it. I'm not busting out my notes app to let you guys know I have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with it. Sorry. All right, number seven. I didn't say anybody's name. Okay, I'm just saying I'm not going to mention.
I was waiting for somebody to bring that up.
Though. Or wait, what's the opposite of undefeated? It's always defeated. Never always break defeated. Out the notes.
No, the notes app is an atrocity every single time. All right, number 7, the least sexy pick so far. I'm not super attracted to it, but Kwity Paye, edge defender for Michigan, going to the Detroit Lions. It fits what they want to do. I like the investment. I still think there's a discussion around who's the best edge defender in this class. He still needs to test as well as people think he will. The production this year was good, not elite, like we thought maybe he could take that step for Michigan. But again, looking at production on the defensive side of the ball, both in the NFL and in the NCAA, is tough because this was such a hard year for defenses with the lack of preparation in the offseason and how much the advantage was given to the offenses with COVID impacting how often they could practice, et cetera. I think it was a very tough year for defenses and specifically defensive prospects to produce at a high level.
Yeah, I agree. The pay pick here, though, the Lions have they just have not invested in their defensive line in terms of draft picks, at least the edge position. And that was kind of by design under Matt Patricia. And so, yes, they have Trey Flowers, but they left the sort of cabinet kind of bare there in terms of talent. And they're still one of the worst pass rushing teams in the NFL. They have to do something. And edge is a position where you can identify the top talent guys. If you're waiting until round 2, round 3 to address your edge rusher, it's not usually going to work. The hit rates in those rounds suck. So you want to get that guy early on if you're Detroit.
All right, jumping to the next pick here at number 8. You have the Carolina Panthers, which I think you're going to see this one mocked a ton. And outside of the top 7 picks, this is where you start to feel comfortable about investing in Micah Parsons, who is a very, very good linebacking prospect. Probably the best one we've seen since Luke Kuechly. Going to the Carolina Panthers at 8 to replace Luke Kuechly. I feel really good about this selection, even though I've gone on rants on this podcast about linebacker value and the positional value of linebackers. But I do think Micah Parsons at 8, I start to feel more comfortable about the pick.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Parsons is he still sees himself kind of as like an edge rusher. I was like listening to the interview with him, and he's like, yeah, I'm an edge rusher by heart. And that's like, I would be interested to see if a team will give him that chance to rush the passer.
Oh, buddy, that changes things.
Because he has everything you could want to be an edge rusher in the NFL, like the size, the length, the explosiveness, and like he takes on blocks. He is the best blitzing linebacking prospect I've seen in some time. So that could be interesting. Just if and the Panthers, like with their kind of college-y whatever defense Phil Snow runs, I think he'd be perfect for.
That's interesting. I kind of want to get Micah Parsons on the podcast. I'll talk to some people, see if we can make it happen. Because I'd be interested to see where he'd want to play in the NFL. And I know I'll get the answer, I'll play anywhere. But I'd like to try and press even further beyond that to see what his thoughts are playing edge defender in the NFL. Because that, of course, increases your positional value if he can get along the edge and actually rush the passer with success. Number 9, you have the Denver Broncos taking Patrick Surtain of Alabama. I love that in Fangio's scheme. I brought this up, I think, yesterday when I was in the office watching the games with the guys. What Fangio has done with legitimately very few pieces in the secondary outside of Justin Simmons is honestly incredible. Like Michael Ojemudia and who's the other rookie corner they're playing out there? They're playing a handful of rookie cornerbacks yesterday. I don't even remember. But Michael Ojemudia among them.
Oh, yeah, and Parnell Motley.
Like, it wasn't perfect by any means, but like what he's been able to do with inexperienced corners this season, I think has been really impressive. Adding an actual legitimate top-tier talent at the position at 9, I think makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't have Von Miller this year. AJ Boye got suspended towards the end of the year. They did not have a ton of talent, and still Vic Fangio was making some magic with that defense. I do think that's kind of, if you're not going to be in on this quarterback class, they've already thrown the pieces at offense. Like, they've already thrown it. You just got to pray for Drew Lock. And if you're not going to, like, adding another wide receiver, adding another tight end, adding another offensive lineman is not going to make that incremental change for Drew Lock. It's going to have to come from within him. So then address the other side of the ball, and I think you can get better at corner.
All righty, moving now to the next picks here. It's another cornerback. The Dallas Cowboys taking Caleb Farley, which when I did my mock draft, I had them take Kyle Pitts here.
Yeah.
And a lot of Cowboys fans are upset. We got to address the defense. We can't stop anybody. I do think Kyle Pitts here still makes sense. I think he's a difference maker. I said in my analysis, there's no team in the NFL with enough weapons to not take Kyle Pitts as high as 10. And I don't think the Dallas Cowboys don't have enough with CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, and Amari Cooper. But Caleb Farley, a really special cornerback prospect that they desperately need on the defensive end.
Yeah, I just think there's some talent at the cornerback position at the top. You have not a lot of talent on that roster at the cornerback position. And Cowboys fans probably rightfully so to be mad because that defense was, yeah, we say whatever, defense doesn't matter. But when you're one of the worst, like 3 or 4 defenses in the NFL, which is what the Cowboys pretty much were this year, you're never going to win. So they do have to fix something there. And I think getting a long tandem of Trayvon Diggs and Caleb Farley, just building blocks for years to come.
All right. Moving now to an interesting pick for sure. I do think that Devontae Smith is a very, very talented receiver. You have him going here at 11 to the New York Giants, who all Giants fans right now want is a receiver. Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, whoever we can get. I want a wide receiver to help Daniel Jones in this offense. The Devontae Smith conversation is interesting. No doubt one of the most productive players we've ever seen over the past 5-6 years we've been grading college football. He's going to probably finish with the best wide receiver grade we've given after Amari Cooper, who did it, I think, 5 or 6 years ago. The question marks with him are, one, the production largely came after Jalen Waddle was hurt, and a lot of that production was schemed. You've called out that he had the most screen passes of what, anyone in the country?
Yeah,
Something along those lines.
Screen catches this year.
The other question mark for Devontae Smith is the body type. He does not have a common body type. He showed up to Alabama as a 3-star recruit at 165 pounds, at 6'1". Yeah. 6'1", 165 pounds. Yeah. Maybe he comes in at 6'1.5", whatever, depending on where he measures in at the combine. Right now, he's only added 13 pounds to his frame.
He's not dense.
Not dense at all. And you look at player comps. I was looking at player comps on Mock Draftable, a site I encourage you to look at if you're looking to like compare body types and athleticism, not necessarily play style. Some names that came up: Rashad Green of Florida State, who has a very similar body comp to Devontae Smith, and then Calvin Ridley. But even Calvin Ridley bulked up over 180 pounds, at his same, and he's 6'1.5", over 180 pounds. Marvin Harrison Sr. is one that people constantly bring up. He had success at around 180 pounds at a similar size. Is Devontae Smith the next Marvin Harrison Sr.? I know Kentley Platt, I think, goes by MathBomb on Twitter, said the only receiver with over 800 receiving yards in a single season or something along those lines with a similar build to Devontae Smith is Nate Washington. And I don't think those guys' play styles are anywhat similar. Mm-hmm. How concerned are you with the body comp and the production being largely schemed?
I'm a little. I think the production being largely schemed is aggressive.
I want to bring that back.
He would have 1,500 yards and like 80 catches without.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm going to take that take back.
But I do think that it's a real thing, and it will show up more and matter more at the NFL level. Density and strength matters, and like a strong catch over a guy who's 19 might not be a strong catch when the guy's 27 and 210 pounds and outweighs you by 30 pounds. Like that, it does matter, but I think we've seen enough of him at this point to realize that, one, he can get off the line of scrimmage very efficiently, which is where I think you'd worry the most. Mm-hmm. And then 2, he doesn't shy away from contact. Like Marquise Brown, he won in college, and he was never, like, there was never any physicality to his game. There's no contested catches. There's none of that. Mm-hmm. And even he's like, I think almost gotten hated on a little too much for not being super productive in that offense. He left a lot of his yards on the football field this past season, but it definitely hasn't translated as well as you probably would have hoped drafting him as the first receiver in that draft class. With Devontae Smith, I think you see the physicality at the catch point. You see him wanting to play a physical brand of football. And I think that's just a necessary, if you are undersized, you can't be afraid of contact and play only a finesse game, which he does not at all. So I'm really not too worried about him.
I think that's the right way to approach the concerns. What are you concerned with? Body type. Where do those concerns show up? At the line of scrimmage and in contested catch situations, where he's proven to have success at a very high level in college football. Yeah. But I do think the other side of that is those concerns at the line of scrimmage and contested catch situations show up more in the NFL, similar to the concerns with Joe Burrow's arm talent. You didn't see it a ton. You weren't like, oh man, if he had a little more juice, he'd be a better quarterback in college. But you do see it now in the NFL when he's trying to push it outside the numbers, and he's not throwing with a ton of anticipation on certain throws. I think Devontae Smith, there's reasons to be hesitant. If you make a completely data-driven decision, this is a body type you don't draft inside the top 10. But from a production standpoint and feeling confident in your evaluation with his ability to approach the ball in the air and releases, I think you can start to feel more confident outside the top 10.
Yeah. We'll see how fast he runs. Like everyone keeps saying he ran like a 4.5 or whatever last year.
4.5 as a sophomore in spring camp is what Jim Nagy has said.
I think he's going to be faster than that because I think he's also gotten bigger since then. Like he was 4.5 when he was 165 pounds. Yeah. So I do think even though he's still not big, he has gotten stronger since then. And I'd be surprised if he doesn't run at least in the 4.4s.
If he runs in the high 4.4s, that's a huge check.
And like Deshaun Jackson was 175 pounds too, and he's gotten by because of speed and been able to do that. So
yep. All right. Moving to number 12, you have after the trading down from 4 to 12 with the San Francisco 49ers, the Atlanta Falcons taking Kyle Pitts. And you talk about a team that you don't have enough weapons to pass on Kyle Pitts. Adding him here with Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones is, in a word, awesome. I think this would be really exciting for Atlanta.
Yeah, they need to address their offensive line somewhere. I would like if they did that in free agency first to some degree, and then not waited, because last time they tried to rely on their draft picks to all of a sudden save them with Caleb McGarry and Chris Lindstrom, it didn't work out so well. So I think that's not the well you want to go back to. You want to free up your options. If a guy like Kyle Pitts is staring you in the face there, to be able to draft him. So I do think that's where I'd go if I was the Atlanta Falcons here. And Hayden Hurst, you gave up a second rounder from. He's not stopping me from getting Kyle Pitts. You can get those guys on the field at the same time easily.
Yep. All right, number 13, you have the Los Angeles Chargers taking Rashawn Slater of Northwestern over some of the other tackles that are currently ranked higher than Slater on PFF's board. Sam Cosmi, I think, is one. Where do you see Slater in this class? Is your opinion of him changing late in the or this early in the process?
I think he's very athletic, and I thought of him as a guard earlier on, but I do think after hearing some other people talk about him and going back and watch, I do think he can stay a tackle. Like, yes, he is undersized. I think he's only 6'3", like 310, which like would suggest for most people guard, but I think he has the feet to play tackle. Held up well against Chase Young at tackle, even though they really didn't have a ton of one-on-ones in their matchup against each other. And I think the Chargers, with the way they're currently constructed, probably need a guy at guard right out the gate, and then a guy who could move out to tackle, and that's why I think Schlater would make the most sense for them.
You know what the discourse is going to be if this guy's got short arms.
Short arms.
This is going to be rough. I mean, Jonah Williams.
Now, he's no
freaking ringer.
Garrett Bradbury, but
no. But I'm saying at offensive tackle, it's
one
of the most. It's like the biggest thing people talk about. And if he's 6'3", 210, statistically, his arms are probably coming under that 33-inch benchmark that people set for offensive tackles. If he comes under that, everyone's going to talk about it. But I do like it for a fit for the Chargers because you said he can't start at guard and kick out when he's ready. Minnesota Vikings at 14. I think this is another one you're just going to consistently see mocked. Gregory Rousseau, a project, lengthy, athletic edge defender. Heard of him? It sound familiar? Going to the Minnesota Vikings to pair up with Danielle Hunter coming back from the injured reserve in 2021. I think this is exactly what the Vikings want to do, and I think Gregory Rousseau is a good enough project to invest him at 14.
Yeah, this one, I think, if I had to bet, this one's probably like one of the most likely picks I've seen outside of the top 10. I just think if Rousseau falls to them at 14, you'd be hard-pressed to see them pass with the physical tools he brings to the table. Just how they've drafted, like that's every single guy that they've taken at defensive end has had a similar physical skill set to Rousseau. And Rousseau is even like farther along that, spectrum. He's way out there on that end of the physical freaks.
I don't think the Jadeveon Clowney comps are stupid, like out of this world. Like from how he was used,
the way he plays,
how he was used at Miami, and then like in terms of freak, like this guy is a legitimate freak.
Yeah.
He only played his redshirt freshman season at Miami and was like legitimately dominant, playing five different positions for Miami. So I'd be interested to see after opting out. We had him on the podcast. He talked about that. After opting out this season, what he does for Minnesota. He probably, again, a project, hasn't played a lot of football, but has all these tools in the world. All right, New England Patriots, this would be a dream scenario for them, I think. Landing Mac Jones at 15 and the San Francisco 49ers going up and trying to get their guy. Mac Jones at 15 to the New England Patriots. Again, is Mac Jones the future at that position? Can you be that confident in him as a quarterback prospect? Is he's the guy you're building around? You're going to try. You have to. You're not going to do the Cam Newton experiment again. Jarrett Stidham's not it. Give Mac Jones an opportunity as you are in the middle of a very bad rebuild for the New England Patriots right now. And I think at 15, I like Mac Jones.
I think it's the biggest thing. You could use a wide receiver, but this roster...
Could they?
Yeah, like everyone's going to be like, oh, no, we need wide receivers before we need a QB. Yeah, you do, but you're going to need a lot of positions. You got old really quickly, this Patriots roster. It's not good, and it's not going to be good next year, no matter what you do. You're not in a great cap situation either, although they do have some space because they have no money tied up at the quarterback position at all right now. So they have some, but they're still I just don't think 2021's going to be their season either. And so at that point, if a guy like Mac Jones is sitting there, you take a shot, see what you got, and then if it doesn't go well, then you're drafting top 3 next year. Then you take that shot at a guy even higher. But I do think that they have to be at least kind of in on this quarterback class. And for everyone saying, oh, Mac Jones, whatever, just product of Alabama, I think he ends up going fairly high in this draft.
Tresh said on this podcast, I'm interested in your take on this, that Mac Jones could challenge Trey Lance for QB4.
I doubt it. I just think
the tools are too different.
With the success of guys like Justin Herbert and Josh Allen in recent years, Trey Lance is still going to get drafted highly.
I have another take. It's about the New England Patriots situation. How committed, and this one's interesting, I don't know how it works, but how committed is Bill Belichick to being the head coach of the New England Patriots in this rebuild?
That's a good question. Because
can he? I don't know. Again, I don't know.
Like I said, it's not 1 year. He thought they could just reload.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what they tried to do this offseason, is tried to make it 1 year and we're back at it. And yeah, they had more opt-outs than anyone else and they'll get some talent back, but it quite clearly they did not have the roster to do that. So I do think that he's pretty damn frustrated right now.
I mean, I'd be at least mulling it over if it was an option, if I was Bill Belichick, to mutually part ways and go seek out a position like Houston. I feel like, oh my God, think about this. If Bill Belichick, again, I don't understand how coaches can get out of contracts on those things, but if Bill Belichick could mutually part ways with the New England Patriots and go to a team like the Houston Texans, who I get and don't have a lot there. They don't have a lot, but they have a quarterback. And I think Bill Belichick has done more with defenses that are, makeshift, put together talents than anyone in the NFL. You bring him to Houston.
Well, I mean, to Houston, if he left the Patriots, he could name his job. He could go to
I know he could.
Green Bay and say, I want to coach Aaron Rodgers. And they'd be like, okay, we're going to fire Matt LaFleur. Sorry.
But I'm talking about current openings where maybe it makes sense, and he wants to win right now. I don't think that's the Jags.
Well,
I don't think that's the Chargers. I don't think that's the Jags, the Chargers.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe it's the Falcons.
I think Chargers could.
Chargers could right now. Maybe this is Chargers. But if he wanted to do that, I would be really, really excited to see it.
He wants to chill out in L.A., reinvent himself.
Dude, coach up Derwin James, Casey Hayward. Fuck, man, that sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Man, I'm getting a little excited. All right, 16, Arizona Cardinals, Jalen Waddle. Yep. You are still of the opinion, and so am I. We had this conversation before the podcast, that Jalen Waddle is a better prospect than Devontae Smith.
Yeah.
But do you think Waddle goes lower? I think there's two reasons Waddle will go lower than Smith, or could potentially go lower than Smith. One, the injury. Obviously, freaking fractured his ankle or broke his ankle this season. That's going to have effect. Two, people are going to look at Henry Ruggs, this flyer out of Alabama that's not having success in Las Vegas, and get a little skeptical. I think Waddle's a better prospect than Ruggs.
Such a better product.
And we said that months ago. We said that Waddle's probably a better prospect than Ruggs. I don't think we firmly said it, but we were definitely hinting that he could be, maybe should be. I think there are teams that are going to shy away from him, though, because of the Ruggs situation and the injury, and that's why he does fall behind Devontae Smith, the more productive receiver this season.
I bet Devontae Smith does go first. I still like Waddle better. He, like I said, outproduced him when they were both on the football field. Is a much more dynamic athlete than Henry Ruggs. So as Henry Ruggs was a straight line, reminded me of kind of Paris Campbell, where like he wasn't shaking guys in the open field. That was not his game. He ran past you. He was one cut and then he was gone. Jalen Waddle can shake guys. He can run past you and then he can also shake you, which is kind of just a different level that honestly really no one else has in this draft class. He is kind of alone in his physical profile. Yes, he's also undersized, like 5'10", 180 something. But he averaged 19.2 yards per target, not per catch. Every time the ball was thrown his way is 19.2 yards. That is not
And he didn't have a stupidly high average depth of target. Like he was getting some underneath stuff too and just turning it into big plays.
If Jalen Waddle was there the whole year, he probably gets more Heisman hype because he probably returns like 2 or 3 kicks also. And gets
Nick Saban's still frustrated that he returned that one kick when he got hurt. So
probably return, that's so. But I do think if he fell to the Cardinals here, obviously you sprint that card in because that's kind of what they wanted Andy Isabella to be, but really hasn't been.
A little bit of a tangent here, but I've been dropping some takes on the Twitter timeline about Cliff Kingsbury and the seat that might be gaining heat.
Oh, you hate Cliff?
I don't hate Cliff. I don't hate Cliff, but they started out 6-3. And they've completely botched games over the past 2 weeks. And I know Strebler happened. I know Strebler came in this past week. What's your opinion of what Cliff Kingsbury has done with Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins this season?
I wrote about this last week. Did you not read it?
I read it. Okay. I read it. But I'm saying, what's the opinion now after this freaking last debacle?
I just don't think the way he is sort of translated his offense to the NFL has been smart. Like he's too tied to what he knows. And I think a couple of things really hammer that home. One is just like his 4th down decisions this year. Was one of the most conservative coaches in 4th downs. Now, I think that started changing towards the end of the season. And 2 is the fact that it's like uncreative usage of DeAndre Hopkins. You have this guy who is your number 1 receiver, and you kind of just plug him at left wide receiver and let defenses know where to roll their coverage every single play. And they don't have anyone else. Like this is a scheme that's built that kind of needs 4 quality receivers, and you got 1, and you haven't adjusted at all with that.
And they've had good success from their offensive tackles. Kelvin Beachum and DJ Humphries both rank inside the top 6 in pressure percentage allowed.
Well, no one wants to rush Kyler. Like you
well, that's part of it too. And they have a quick release, all that stuff. But regardless, it's not like the offensive line has been a disaster by any means. But over the past 2 seasons, in 2019, Cliff's offense ranked 20th in EPA per play. This year, 24th.
Yeah,
that's not good enough. I don't care if you've battled injuries, you are supposed to be this offensive mastermind with a legitimate, insane talent in Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. That's frustrating in my opinion. I'm frustrated at Cliff Kingsbury at the very least, if not lighting a little freaking lighter, a Zippo under his seat.
There's just not enough. There's no downfield aspect to that offense. It's all
with a quarterback
RPOs,
that can throw freaking
quick game,
throw over the mountain,
screens wide. It's just that, yeah.
All right, the Cardinals take Jalen Waddle at 16 here, maybe unlock the deep ball in Arizona. At 17, let's speed through this. You have the Las Vegas Raiders taking a very good edge defender who had a ton of success against the backup left tackle for Cincinnati. Poor guy, German-born kid. I've actually had a conversation with him multiple times when I was covering the Bearcats a little bit. Super nice guy. Has added a ton of weight. His body has completely transformed over the past 4 years. Gets thrown in because I think the left tackle, James Hudson, I believe is his name, gets thrown out or ejected, whatever it may be. Targeting. And he just gets absolutely roasted. Ojulari just stuck it to him. It wasn't even close. Like, his hands looked very good, and people are going to highlight those pass rushes on his. When he gets drafted, the highlight reel is going to include that motherfucker. You know, the Cincinnati backup. And it sucks to see it. But as Ojulari put him in a blender a bit. At 17, I like this value, and I like it better than the guy you have going next, where you see a lot of mock drafts going with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah going to the Dolphins at 18. The Raiders could go with that decision, but I like Ojulari over JOK in this situation.
Yeah, I think, one, Max Crosby took a massive step back this year, and two, they just don't really have a true speed rusher. That is what Azeez Ojulari is. They have a couple set the edge type of guys. I don't know what kind of defense they're going to be running next year, but everyone could use a speed rusher. Like, everyone has room for that in their scheme on third downs and whatnot. So I do think he adds something to a pass rush that's just been lackluster. And the Ojularis, they're the next Bosa's. They're not as good as the Bosa's, but his brother BJ plays for LSU. Also going to be a first-round pick. Just get ready for it.
Man, they're not the next Bosa's though.
Ojulari
no
is not. Bosa's,
yeah. That Ojulari is not a Bosa from a production standpoint. Close to what he is. But so for, this past week against Cincinnati, 92.7 PFF pass rusher grade. On the year, a 91.3 PFF pass rusher
It is
grade.
weird, though, how those, their families, are there any other positions where they all are along the line of scrimmage, I feel like. Are there any families, at wide receiver, that have two guys that are just, in the NFL at receiver?
You see it at quarterbacks, obviously.
Quarterback, too. O-line, you got the Martins, you got the Watts defensively. You got any... Trying to think corners.
I don't know, man.
Any real?
Asante Samuel Jr. and his son, or his dad, I guess, played the same position.
Yeah, AB's dad was the Arena League guy that was lighting the world on fire.
Oh.
That kind of, I don't know if that counts.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that counts. Does the Arena League count? I'm not really
If you're
sure.
good enough.
18, you have the Miami Dolphins taking Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, one of your favorites. Notre Dame faithful there. Very, very good linebacking prospect. I agree that the gap between JOK and Micah Parsons isn't all that significant.
It's because it's at a position where I just don't think you're making that big of an impact.
Yes.
Also, linebacker.
That's the big reason.
Coverage wise, they're kind of on a similar plane. Owusu-Koramoah might even be better in coverage. You just feel safer about Parsons.
Micah Parsons is better against the run, though. His run defense is absurd. You turn on his tape in 2019. I don't think you see a linebacker fitting the run better. I think he ranked inside the top 5 and percentage of run snaps played where he was first to make contact on the player. Inside the top 5 in college football. If not number 1, I don't remember the stat specifically off the top of my head. All right, Mike, we are running long on this podcast. I'm getting calls from Chris live from the NBC studios that we got to rush through this. But let's get our rolling rooks going, and then let's get to Calvin Ridley and Dave Brock, the Atlanta Falcons wide receivers coach. Rolling rooks, run through the top 5 rookies in the somewhat useless Week 17.
All right, number 1, Jonathan Taylor. Not useless because they needed to win that game. 250-plus yards in that one. And my bold prediction, if you'll recall, preseason, Jonathan Taylor finishes top 3 in rushing. Dude finished 3rd to end the season.
Hell yeah.
Needed to pass 6 guys in Week 17. He did it. Thank you for making me look smart, Jonathan. That's why you got the top spot. Number 2, Jerry Jeudy. Had that, 90 whatever yard reception?
Or 92. I think it was 92.
Ridiculous speed on that one.
What
and
happened to Jonathan Abram there?
Couple releases. Oh, dude, Jonathan Abram looks awful. Just he busts coverages every week, multiple coverages.
There was another one where Jerry Jeudy's catching a crosser on a play action where he goes to lower his shoulder on the hit. He still catches it on. There was a couple really head scratching plays on Jonathan Abram's tape in Week 17 and in the weeks prior.
That's you could say that every single week.
Yeah.
And he also had a couple nasty releases against Trayvon Mullen. I think he forced one penalty. He should have forced another. At number 3, Chase Claypool went for over 100, I believe, on the day. Had a few other balls that could have been caught, but could have been online. But yeah, Mason Rudolph throwing it to him that day. A couple nice contested catches down the field. Number 4, J.K. Dobbins. Dude averaged 6 yards a carry this year. it must be nice. Like running backs probably dream about playing in the Ravens scheme.
He was running through some open ass holes.
Yeah.
I mean, Jonathan Taylor, I think, forced
still.
more missed tackles and had a better day, but Dobbins was like, it was fucking open. It was a field day against Mike Quinn's Cincinnati Bengals.
Sorry, Mike Quinn, but that was Bengals. Also, by the way, lost 65-6 this year against the Ravens. Just completely.
So the Ravens end up finishing with the NFL lead in point differential. But I mean, how much? When you're just freaking hammering the Cincinnati Bengals
seem fair.
And boosting the stats, I don't know. It's an interesting point. I mean, it's an interesting stat when you think about it like that.
All right, and then number 5, Xavier McKinney. We didn't see him until week 12 this year. The Giants safety. Looked strong, had the game-ending interception, obviously, but that was kind of a gimme pick, tossed up in the air. Also blew up a screen, had a couple other nice plays. Was stride for stride with CeeDee Lamb, gave up a catch, but it's a safety guard in CeeDee Lamb. Just being there was enough, in my opinion. So nice day from him. I think they got a player going forward.
You love to see it. I have one clip on my Twitter right now of Jerry Jeudy absolutely roasting Damon Arnett and getting called, but they didn't call penalty on defensive holding. It
wasn't Trayvon Mullen.
But Trayvon Mullen, they also missed one on Trayvon Mullen. So the play before the 92-yard touchdown for Jeudy, Trayvon Mullen got away with a hold too, and then they didn't call that one. But Jeudy was roasting kids. The first play was a slant to Jeudy first read, and he just gave Trayvon Mullen the business. It was fun to watch. I mean,
if Tresh said today that he would take Devontae Smith over Jerry Jeudy,
he's high,
which is just.
Don't rip on
Find someone else next time I can't make the podcast.
Quinn, you might have to step in for Tresh next. I don't know what's going to happen. We'll have someone else produce the pod. All right, well, that's going to do it. An absolutely loaded podcast, but it's the first day of draft season, Quinn. Stay up a little later. Have a good time. 95-minute podcast here. Mock draft, rolling rooks, coach search, all that stuff. Let's now jump to probably the highlight of the podcast. Calvin Ridley and Dave Brock. Dave Brock first. I talked to Dave Brock. Here's a snippet of the Dave Brock interview, followed by Calvin Ridley.
But I'll be honest with you, I really think the breakout started last year. You know, he had a run after our bye week. He had a run going in those 4 games that was really tremendous, and then just unfortunately got hurt. But his production was really, really good. And, I think he just really picked up kind of where he left off, starting in this year and just embraced the fact that he was going to be a dominant player. And again, his skill set lends it to being really explosive and being able to create big plays. He's got great movement. He's got great body quickness. He's got great speed, all those things and make him really, really hard to handle.
So how do you think his role changes in the offense when Julio Jones is out? Because he does become that new number 1 for Matt Ryan. How much does his role change in that offense?
I think it changes in terms of how we would specifically game plan and scheme plays for him. Certainly when Julio's not there, but also the defensive structure and makeup changes. Julio when he's playing. He really, dictates the coverage. He dictates a lot of double teams. He creates a lot of opportunities for the other players on the Falcons to get one-on-one coverage. And when who's not playing, some of those doubles and most of that attention now shifts to Calvin. And this season, he's handled that, fantastically. I mean, he's done a great job and continued to be able to create big plays for us, to chunk plays and explosive plays as we call them. Whether he's singled, doubled, they kick the coverage to him. He's been able to handle really anything that anybody's thrown at him defensively.
Something I've noticed when studying Calvin Ridley and looking at his tape, he sees a high percentage, and most of the Atlanta Falcons receivers do, and I think it's because you do have that combo of Ridley and Julio Jones. See a ton of off coverage. How are you coaching Ridley and those receivers to work against off coverage? Because it's a totally different ball game when comparing going against press man and working your releases, going against off coverage and attacking cornerbacks leverage. How is that coached on your end, and how do you think Ridley has handled some of that development?
Well, I think, it starts with, you really try to look at why are they probably playing off coverage. And I think Calvin is so good at the line of scrimmage, so good as a release player. He's really, really hard to get up and bump. He's able to release. He can win inside, outside. He can win with his feet. He can win with his speed. And I think when you talk about off coverage, you really have a chance now where, Calvin's skill set is amplified because he's going to run at people full speed and, have the opportunity, at least the way that we do things, he's going to have the opportunity to go out, in, or up and at all different depths. He'll run outs at 6 to 8 yards. He's going to run outs at 12 to 14 yards. He'll run outs at 25 yards, the way that we do things, depending on whether it's quick game or drop back or play pass. And, the route tree that he has is really, really big, and he's able to do all of it. So, he really is able to attack those corners in every possible way, whether it's crossing routes, deep routes, crossing routes, shallow or deep. He's done a fantastic job. And again, for him, he has the ability to win, at the line of scrimmage versus bump. And when he gets off coverage, I think his speed and his body movement and quickness are the things that help him the most.
I mean, you can't bring up Calvin Ridley without bringing up his release package. Is that something he came from Bama and Nick Saban to Atlanta with, or are you taking credit for any of that? Because he is an absolute technician at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, no, I think we talk about the ways that you release, but I think, when you look at a player like Calvin or Julio or even Russ Gage, who's had a terrific year for us, a lot of those things, I'm not going to tell you that they don't work on them and they don't develop them, but some of those things are, God-given talents. I mean, Calvin's an incredibly talented young guy physically. He's a tough guy. He's got mental toughness, and he is like a hyper competitive player. And, when you have bump coverage, that's the ultimate one-on-one. It's you and that guy. Now sometimes because Julio's out, now he sees bump coverage plus a safety over the top. And he's in a double situation that Julio's in most of the time when he's in there. And again, he's done a great job even against those circumstances. So I would be giving credit to Calvin, certainly not taking any of it.
I have plans to talk to Calvin soon. I think we're scheduled to talk today. But before I do, I'd love to hear from your perspective what you think the impact Julio Jones has had on Calvin Ridley. Two Bama guys. Obviously, Julio Jones will go down as one of the NFL's best receivers we've really seen. What impact do you think Jones has had on Ridley in his development?
Well, I think one thing that probably isn't seen as widely as it should be is, Julio is an elite teammate. He's trying to help all of his teammates in any way he can. But specifically in the receiver room, he's been there, and obviously the Alabama connection and the relationship prior to getting here, that helps because there's a comfort level and the ability to say things and talk about things that maybe are a little bit harder if you don't know a person. But the thing that Julio does, he puts everybody at ease. He's going to create a situation where he's going to be able to try to help Calvin in any area that he thinks Calvin needs help. And one of the nice things about Julio is he doesn't put any limitations on anybody. He doesn't ever want to hear somebody can't do something. So, even something that maybe Calvin does really, really well, if Who sees something that he thinks might be able to improve that, he'll address it. And, Who's a great teammate. He and Calvin have an incredible relationship. It's really special to see. I feel fortunate to have been involved with it the last few years, and I certainly think Calvin's benefited tremendously from Who, not only as a mentor, for the lack of a better word, but also because when Julio's out there, you have an opportunity to get a lot of coverage situations that are advantageous.
Something, and I kind of want to finish with this too, and it's a little bit of a technical question that I hope you can answer, is what we've noticed here at PFF is that Calvin Ridley's route depth has increased significantly. So has his average depth of target. Do you feel that that's something that was placed an emphasis in the offseason, how they wanted to expand Calvin Ridley's role was pushing him further downfield, having him win those valuable routes on the vertical route tree? Or do you think that's by circumstance with Julio Jones being injured as often as he has?
No, I think that the intent was there from the beginning, because I think if you look back, you would see that I think it's been constant for the year, even when Who was playing early on. But again, you can't minimize the impact that Julio not playing has. You know, that's going to increase your targets. It's going to increase the number of opportunities that are schemed for you in a game. You know, and you know, I think if you realistically think about it, you know, if you got Julio Jones playing in the game, you know, 60 snaps and you know, he walks off the field with less than 15 targets, you know, you probably should be thinking shame on you. Like you got to target who when he's playing. I feel exactly the same way about Calvin. You know, it's just more challenging when they're both playing the full game. You know, so when who has been out, I think you just see maybe the best way to describe it would be more of the same, not necessarily different. I think if you went back and looked at the first 3 or 4 games, you would see all the things that you're talking about with Calvin. They've just probably increased over time, especially here the last 4 or 5 weeks, you know, when who hasn't played in the games. And again, I think if you look at Calvin's performance when Julio hasn't played, it's been at an absolutely elite level.
All right,
I mean, he's had some of the best games of his career, you know, this year when who hasn't played, because I think he's taken on that I don't look at it as a burden, but he's taken on that opportunity to try to help lift the offense, because he knows that you know, we still need that production from our position.
100%. I mean, he's been handed an opportunity to, you know, fill in for Julio Jones, and has risen to that occasion. I lied. I have one more question for you, and I'll let you go.
Sure.
I'm going to ask Calvin this as well, but from your perspective, working with these guys every day, what's the level of competitiveness between these two? Obviously, Julio Jones is the old dog, the veteran, the guy you're learning from, but I'm sure there is some levels of competitiveness in practice that people don't see in these games where Ridley and Julio Jones are going at it.
Yeah, I would think that they are competing with each other to be the best they can be. I don't think they compete with each other in terms of I think what a normal person would think, like more catches or more yards or anything like that. You know, I think one of the things that we're all fortunate to have, you know, with the Falcons organization is, like, when you look at somebody and you want to be great, you want to be among the best that have ever done it, maybe the best that's ever done it. Well, he sits in our room, and you can watch him work. You can watch him in the meetings. You can watch how he handles the media. You can watch how he does all of his business on and off the field, you know, and you see that it carries over to being, you know, one of the elite players, I think, in the National Football League ever, not only at receiver, but in general. And, you know, I think with Calvin being here, you know, he's able to look at that and he's able to, I'm sure, take those things that are going to help him personally be the best player he can be, maybe be the best person he can be. You know, he's going to ask Julio for advice on a lot of topics. It's not just football. And, you know, who, like I said, is such a great teammate and such a great person that, you know, he's always willing to help and always willing to, you know, try to be the best teammate he can for those other guys.
I talked about this with Brock, and that, you know, a lot of what it has been is that you've just been given more opportunities from a target's perspective, but still creating the same levels of separation against quarterbacks.
I always got open since my rookie year here. Like, I could get open. I just wasn't in the reads at some point sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think let's talk specifically about, you know, your ability to get open. I think something that I've been a big fan of your game for when I turn on the tape is you see a very low percentage of press coverage. Among receivers in the NFL, you see a lot of off coverage. And I think, again, Brock said this too. It's because you're really good at the line and you can get releases, and that's how you create separation. How does route running change, and how does attacking leverages change when you are working against off coverage? You know, what in your mind changes? I know it varies by route, but I'd be interested to know how different it is to create separation against off coverage versus you know, being at the line.
Honestly, I like when they're off. It's because when they're off, I can really separate. I can give them so much speed. Like, they're not touching me in my first 5 yards. I can really give them so much speed where they're going to panic, and I could just go any direction, as opposed to when they're pressed, they can just try to push me and hold me when it's a little harder. But I still get some type of separation by leaning on them, just giving them certain angles. It's all about alignment and angles, and it's all about angles to me. If I get a guy on his feet, like say I'm running a vertical route or a stop route, and he turns, and I can get him to just turn, and once I start really running, that's when I know to stop. It's just all about, watching your opponent, feeling it. It's really feeling it in the alignment and the adjustments like that I can make between just the movements he gives me to make it right and wrong.
Do you watch a lot of film in game weeks or even in the offseason of your opponent, like specific cornerbacks and those things? And when you are watching that film, what are you looking for, tendencies and different things like that?
Yeah, every DB I don't win against this year, I watched them and watched the whole defense. But I'm looking at the other receivers they're playing against. What did that receiver do to, win some of the reps, and how can I use it? What am I need to do? Is he a physical guy? Is he just gonna let me run off the line and try to run with me? I'd be looking for all little key things to help me go into the game. And I actually, when I go to the game, when I'm watching film, I actually remember in the game, what I want to do to this guy. So I'm not like a guy who just watches and I'm watching it for the hell of it, but I'm really watching it. I'm going into the game with a plan. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to win.
You have to, man. I mean, I think it's very similar, personally, I think it's very similar to pass rushers. Pass rushers go into every game with a plan. They look at their offensive tackle, who they're going against, and try and find a plan to beat them, win their reps. Because it's a very isolated matchup, wide receiver versus corner. It's a battle. A pass rusher versus offensive tackle. In these one-on-one situations, you're looking to win every rep. And winning every rep.
Just like receiver, really.
Yeah, I would agree. 100%. When I talked to Coach Brock, I brought up your release package, and you create such great separation at the line of scrimmage. And I said, "Is that all you? Is he coaching you? Are you coaching him up?" But he said 90% of it, or whatever he said, is God-given talent, man. He just said it's God. Sometimes these guys just have talent. How much do you work on your release package, or how much is it just God helping you out from the top there?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be real honest. It's I literally train my body. I work out. The releases. That's all I do is think. What can I do to, you know what I'm saying? But it really is just God given, ability. I can make the cuts. I can be quick. I can be tough. I can just do it if I want to do it. You know what I'm saying? But honestly, it's God given. But I still go in there with a plan. You know what I'm saying? I really go into the games with ideas, and I watch all the plays that I think I'm finna get. I go over them. I try to see how every possible way I can win, whatever he's giving me, and that's what I do.
Yeah. At what point do you think, whether it be at Alabama or even with the Atlanta Falcons, do you feel like you really started to get it from a preparation and release package standpoint technically? Because I think the God-given talents got you to where you were at Alabama when you were there your first 2 years there. But since then, you've developed as a technician, both in your latter years at Alabama and then at Atlanta. When do you think you really got that part of your game?
At Alabama, it wasn't at Alabama. I was just good. I was just a naturally good football player.
Same. I was pretty good in college too.
Yeah, but I didn't know anything, man. I didn't know. I wasn't confident. I honestly wasn't confident in Alabama until I got here and I watched Julio Jones and Mohamed Sanu and Justin Hardy, how they catch the ball, how they aggressive, how they talk, how confident they were in themselves. Like, I'm gonna do it. I can do it. I got it. And man, I didn't realize until my end of my rookie year just how confident Julio was. I was just like, man, what's wrong with this guy, man? He could beat everybody. And then my second year, I just started to just try to think like him. Like, I'm the better athlete. I'm gonna win every time. I'm the better athlete. So this year, I just honestly been like, man, if they stop me, they stop me. But I'm the better athlete. I should win. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Catch. I got to catch. Make sure I'm catching. I work on my catches every day. But honestly, I try to keep my confidence as high as I can.
I want to talk more about the relationship you have with Julio Jones. This guy's a future Hall of Fame receiver, one of the best receivers the NFL has really ever seen. And you've had the opportunity to work with him since you got there in Atlanta. What impact has he had on you? It sounds like his confidence and the way he approaches the game has obviously had an impact on you. But what are some other things that he's done for you?
Honestly, I always say this, man. They've made me a really good player. I feel like just watching and listening to him, ain't nothing he could do. Everybody knows the ability he has, but the thinking he has, like, he's gone through everything I possibly can go through, every injury, every mind thinking, like he's gone through, and he's not afraid to tell you, like, I was thinking like that once upon a time. You know what I'm saying? This is what you do to get yourself to this level and to this thinking, and it's really all a mind game. If you already have the ability, it's a mind thing. Now you just get your confidence on the right level, and man, you could ball.
Coach Brock also said that something that's underrated with Julio Jones, and I'm sure you'd attest to this as well, is that, he's this great player on the football field, so productive, but he's one of the best teammates. He wants every single person on the team to have success, and I think that is...
I haven't seen anything. I mean, I ain't been on a lot of teams. I've been around a lot of players, but I haven't seen anything like from the, like, they drafting wide receivers in here. He's the, the head wide receiver. They're drafting guys and multiple guys. I mean, like, even free agent guys, he's coaching them up. You know what I'm saying? Showing them what you could have did here, and he really cares. He really cares about people. And
they've invested a ton at the wide receiver position. He's helped groom every single guy. Justin Hardy, yourself, Russell Gage,
there's a standard here, and he's not gonna let you come through here and then go somewhere else and not say, "Oh man, you don't came from Atlanta. I see why you know what I'm saying?" There's a standard here.
That's great, man. That's great. I want to talk about next year a little bit. Look ahead to next year and think about how does Calvin Ridley sustain this production? How does Calvin Ridley sustain this dominance? And obviously it's staying healthy, staying confident. But what do you think you can work on this offseason to make sure you don't come off the top? You don't let come down at all going into 2021 and the following seasons.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna work on every aspect of my game and bigger, stronger, faster, all that. But it all really comes down for me, honestly, staying healthy. Mm-hmm. If I'm healthy and I'm out there and I'm feeling good, I should be good. I should be, tearing it up. And I mean,
healthy is key, man. It's big.
Huh?
Staying healthy is big, man. It's so important.
It's huge. It's
everything.
It's huge, bro.
Let's talk.
Go
ahead.
Man, I should have. I don't know. I should have had a better season than this year, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly.
Is that because of injuries, or what do you think? What do you think went into that?
Injuries, definitely all injuries. Man.
Dude, what we have to talk about? That game where you had 0 receptions, where everyone was blown away. I mean, the fantasy football community is one thing. I'm not a huge fan of that community, but they're losing their minds. Everyone's losing their minds. Best receiver on Atlanta. What happened in that game? Let's talk about it.
Man, no excuses. I didn't feel that good going into the game. What was that? Week 4?
I think somewhere around there, yeah.
Yeah, so one of those week 1 or 2, I pulled my calf. So I was on that. And then by me playing on it for another week or so, like something like that, it had my whole leg jacked up.
Oh, yikes.
So I went into that game a little banged up, but I still should have did it.
Yeah.
And
it was against Green Bay, too. I mean, Jair Alexander's one of the better young corners in the NFL.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? It wasn't that.
Yeah, I didn't think it was either. Because if you watch the tape again, and you don't just watch targets, you watch every single route, you were creating a lot of separation, and there were a handful of opportunities you had. Yeah, you were getting open. Let's talk about.
And it was cold.
It was cold. No excuses. These are reasons, not excuses. These are reasons, not excuses.
Nah, they got a really good team, good ballers over there.
Absolutely. So who do you think are some of the better cornerbacks you've faced this year, or even faced in the NFL? Some of these guys that really do give you a good game every single time you see them.
This season or period in the NFL?
Period. Let's go period.
I got to get to Tampa. I'm going to just say the Tampa corners. They're the big tall guys. They play pretty good. Say Tampa. I got to give it to Green Bay. They always play. They got good. They play pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Good corner, man. I would say rookie year. My rookie year, Dallas, when I played Jones, he was pretty good. Who else was really good? Damn.
Tampa pretty good. You went for 10 for 163 and a touchdown against Tampa a couple weeks ago.
That day they wasn't that good, but they be usually good.
I mean, Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean are honestly two of the better younger cornerback tandems in the NFL right now. I would agree with you there.
I'll take Carlton Davis on my team any day.
Yeah. I'm with you. Let's talk about some of these. You know who I want to talk about is Jerry Jeudy, another Alabama receiver that's playing in the NFL. I recently was in on an interview with Xavier Howard, and Xavier Howard was raving about Jerry Jeudy. This guy can create separation with anybody. He ran a slant that spinned him around. What is the ceiling for Jerry Jeudy, man? Because he has not had a ton of help from the quarterback position there in Denver, has seen a lot of inaccurate passes his way, but this guy can separate in a similar way to you. I don't know who's better there. It's up to you to debate, but Jerry Judy's playing well.
He can have it. He can have it. I just ball. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's my little bro. He can have it.
Mm-hmm.
But man, the ceiling is, there's no ceiling. You know what I'm saying? For me, I think he's gonna win every rep. That's how we think. We're gonna run every rep. I don't want to, get into what they got going over there, but he's gonna be fine. He's gonna be totally fine. He's a baller, natural baller. It doesn't really matter the situation. He just, they got to get their things going over there, but there's no worries with him.
Only a couple more questions for you, Calvin, then we'll let you go on New Year's Day. Happy New Year, by the way, 2021.
Appreciate it, Cindy.
Of course, man. How much do you think your role changes? And honestly, Coach Brock spoke to this and said it's just opportunity, really. But how much do you think your role changes when Julio Jones is out? And you've stepped up big time after time, game after game, when Julio Jones has missed with injuries. Does your role change significantly? Are you running, different routes? And something I've noticed this year is that you're running, on average, according to PFF's charting data, deeper routes on average. And your average depth of target has increased. Like, they're pushing the ball downfield to you. Is that some of that because you're filling in for Julio Jones' shoes and chasing those big plays? I'm interested to know how much your role does change when he is out.
To me, I don't think that much.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of stay where I'm at for the last 3 years, but I don't. Not too much.
Yeah.
Not too much.
Gotcha. All right, man. Well, that's all I had for you, man. I really appreciate you taking the time after practice and jumping on the call. We'll have to get back into it maybe in the offseason as we look ahead to 2021. But best of luck moving forward. I hope this new year is fantastic for you. Thanks again. My goodness. Interviews with both Brock and Ridley in a lot of ways turned into the Julio Jones podcast, because both those guys had so many good things to say about Julio Jones. But man, working on a piece right now for Calvin Ridley about how sustainable this third-year production is. I'm feeling very good about Calvin Ridley being that receiver for the Atlanta Falcons moving forward. Until next time, guys, make sure you rate, review, and like the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Austin Gayle, Mike Renner, 2-for-1 Drafts.